Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the First Ring Daily. I'm your co-host, Brad Sams, and sitting next to me is the man who abuses the letters T and R in his last name, Mr. Paul Thurrott.
Wow. Good morning, Brad, or good afternoon, Brad.
Paul, what time did you get to the show today?
What time is it now?
1 o'clock.
A little while ago.
So as you can tell, we're still at Ignite. This is the second episode, and after this, we will be actually heading back to our homes, thank God, because I can't stand Paul anymore, to continue filming the rest of these episodes. But behind us is the show floor. And what happened yesterday? Satya held a keynote?
Yes, he did. Well, yet late yesterday, right? So this is the second, or maybe even the third set of keynotes, depending on how we're measuring things. And this time it was a little more forward-leaning, a little more aspirational.
So the opposite of you?
Yes, right. The opposite of my, yes. And I think in keeping with, the things that maybe Bill Gates used to do at CES,
sure,
or Comdex in the past, just kind of forward-looking.
Yeah, and one of the things he talked about was this field programmable gate array. And they made a big deal about this, and they actually showed off what it is. And it's kind of like this supercomputer that they had in the cloud, where they just converted Wikipedia, all of Wikipedia, in 1/10 of a second. Which was
like a 4060X. I'm
yes.
old, Brad. I need comparisons that make
For
sense
anybody
to me.
who was born after, what, 1960s, can you explain what that is?
Yes, that had the math coprocessor built in, Brad. Everybody knows that.
Abacus, you still using this?
Yep.
Yep. Anyways, so this big gate array that they're using is actually a really big deal. They've built it into the foundation of what is Azure. And the way they're promoting this is that they now have almost an on-demand solution for a supercomputer. I think if
in the cloud.
In the cloud.
Yep.
And if you go back 10, 15 years, there was this big race to have the largest and fastest computer for government applications, right. Nuclear weapons testing simulations, and now that's almost available to the public.
Now we have it for Microsoft Office.
Yeah, and actually Bing, for that matter, they're now using it on. But there was a couple cool things they are actually using it for today. They're actually using it with Azure to promote, or to improve network speed across its infrastructure.
Right, the fabric between the different data centers and so forth.
So this is kind of Microsoft's been like their ace up the sleeve, right? And that's what it seems like. I mean, you can go build a data center, but you can't put in these chips that Microsoft has custom designed and now utilizing. I mean, the guy just had a slider bar, and he's like, oh, how much longer do we want to wait? And unfortunately, he got it really fast, because typically when I'm doing that stuff, it's like an hour, great, I'm going to go play Call of Duty.
Sure.
But they're trying to
He
ruin
did it in the time it takes you to blink.
Yeah. Which is nuts.
It's funny, it says a lot about the age we live in when Microsoft gets into hardware design and it's for the cloud.
Yeah.
Right? It's not for a PC, it's not for a mobile device, it's for the cloud.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, so what else did he mention? He mentioned that Cortana, this is kind of an interesting one, and honestly, it took me by surprise. Cortana has 133 million monthly active users.
Right, so this is across, 400 million Windows 10 PC users, however many million Windows Phone users, 20 million-ish Xbox One users, and then I guess also
we got
Cortana
iOS
on Android and iOS.
And so I'd really actually love to know what the breakdown is. I wonder how much of that.
We're never going to see that.
No, Microsoft doesn't even break out Xbox sales for that matter, so we'll never actually see that. My question to you actually is, Paul, is do you use Cortana on your desktop?
No, only passingly. I'm old, as we've discussed earlier, and I've gone slowly into this kind of digital assistant thing. I was not a big fan of Siri when they introduced that. I saw real promise, and still do, in Google now. And Cortana, I think, is in many ways the most interesting because it does work across all the platforms.
Sure.
It works everywhere you are. They don't have that kind of home device yet, other than the thing you might carry around with you. Or I guess you could say an Xbox maybe qualifies for that. But I think it's in many ways the one that has the most promise. But I think the way you use this thing differs depending on your situation. So I like, standing in a kitchen needing some information about a recipe or some fact or whatever makes a lot of sense. If you're out in the world and you need answers to questions, it makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of an old school keyboard mouse guy, so when I'm sitting in front of a computer, I tend to type. But maybe that's just me.
What I was more curious, and again, we will never actually know this, so the 133 million, is that, like I hit the Windows key and I start typing?
Yeah.
Technically, that could be considered part of Cortana,
well,
like Cortana search, right?
Literally it is, yeah.
So it's if the 133 million people are part of that group, I think it's a significantly lower threshold of what actually qualifies as a use of Cortana, and that number's not as impressive, at least to me.
Well, what's an active user though? I mean, if you just do that once a month, that's not necessarily active. Right?
As Microsoft is very good at talking about in vague terms, sure, 133 million sounds great, but when you actually try to figure out what it means, you can't really do it.
I was in an interview yesterday with a Microsoft executive who will remain unnamed because he was a great guy, but
Terry?
yeah. And no, but he used the term Mao a few times, and it was like that gag in Super Troopers where they're meowing at the car, and I'm thinking, is he pranking me? And so finally I said, what are you talking about? And Mao is monthly average users. It's so Microsoft has these new metrics that they use to determine whether products and services are successful, right? And obviously in the old days, you'd ship units to in boxes to stores, you could say, we sold X number of these things, that's success. And these days, they're measuring eyeballs, they're measuring monthly average users.
Yeah, so my complaint about that metric is actually what Skype did. So if you remember, when Skype launched the browser add-on for Outlook, and it was a total disaster, but it was on by default. As soon as you logged into Outlook.com, it logged you into Skype and just put that thing.
You can do that today as a joke. If you like to hear annoying pop-up sounds, have a Skype conversation with someone and open OneDrive in the web.
Yeah, no kidding, because they can't figure out you already have the desktop app open.
All right, let's not devolve here.
But anyways, so the point is that when everybody would log into Outlook.com, that Skype team will get a monthly active user because of that.
Sure.
And so I think they were.
You're saying this is a fuzzy number.
Yeah, I really do. Because I think at least the Skype team intentionally was inflating that, because that was a stupidly easy way. There was no way to turn it off at that time.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
Yeah, I digress. Other things, so this will be interesting to talk about, and I'll be curious to see if anybody else has any insight into it. Cloud files, which we have known have been built into Redstone 2, this week, Microsoft kind of pulled back the cover a little bit on that as OneDrive Sync, and it looks like they're
headed. If I was home right now, I would pull a lever and confetti would come down and I'd say, placeholders are back.
Yes.
Is that the case?
Yeah, kind of. I think from a personal standpoint, I think this is the first step on the road to fully getting back the OneDrive placeholders that we all love and remember from Windows 8. Any headline that says placeholders are back.
The one thing we all know and love from Windows 8.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it took our placeholders and our start button.
Yep.
But this is for what is it for? It's for SharePoint.
SharePoint document libraries.
Yes, and it basically is OneDrive, or basically is placeholders, right? You can go navigate through the structure, right mouse click on a file and sync it down. If it's not synced, it has a little cloud icon. If it is synced, it has a green check mark.
The way to think about this is that over time, Microsoft has had different sync clients for different things.
Yep.
So there was a OneDrive consumer sync client, there was a OneDrive for business sync client, and there was a Groove / SharePoint workspace / SharePoint whatever client. A way to access your cloud-hosted documents in different ways. There's someone. He's coming to get me. So over time, they've consolidated those clients, and the OneDrive client that we have today in Windows 10 will do both OneDrive consumer and OneDrive for business. And I think if I understand this correctly, because I haven't seen it yet, and it is available now in a preview.
Yes,
so we'll be able to look at it today. You can get a single client now that adds this SharePoint document library functionality as well. And so you could have 3 entries in your file explorer, but I think it's the SharePoint one that does placeholder type functionality only. I don't think you get it in OneDrive or OneDrive for Business.
So the one thing we have not heard yet, and it's kind of an area we got to look deeper into, we don't know if this is coming to the consumer client. That's right. It's great, the enterprise, and obviously everybody in the enterprise is probably happy with this. Let's be honest though, it's really more, at least in my opinion, useful for the home user who has less storage on their device. They're not using corporate.
I would say it's probably useful for both, but
maybe you're wrong. Maybe you're right.
I will, in fact, say it is useful for both, but we don't know. And so today, hopefully, we're going to try to find that out.
Yeah. So we'll see if Microsoft will kind of give us that little nod. You would have to think it would be.
Yes. In fact, given the uproar, I'm surprised.
Yeah, because the one thing we don't really know, the kind of outlier situation, is actually Dropbox is building a feature like this.
Right.
And they're coming to market with it, but we don't. Dropbox made this big, grander announcement about it.
I know.
And then it was kind of like.
I talked to someone from Microsoft when Dropbox made that announcement, and I talked to him on the phone, so I didn't actually see him rub his hands together, but he said something to the effect of, they'll find out.
Yeah, because this one legitimately is a very hard actual problem to solve, and there's some people here from Microsoft who will tell you that. So
right.
It'll be interesting to see how they pursue this, especially with the people who have a lot of files. I mean, I have terabytes of pictures of my family and my daughter and whatnot up in the cloud, and obviously I don't want them all on this thing.
Yeah, I've seen every one of them. They're all in Facebook.
I know. I text them every single one of you, especially at 3 a.m.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I'll send more. But like I'm salivating at the idea that I'll soon get this, because this thing only has 256, and for a lot of people, I mean, heck, you can buy a 1 terabyte SD card now.
Right.
But you know, here we are with a 256 gigabyte laptop. and I can't get all that stuff, and there's even work stuff that I have up there that I want to sync. So
Yeah, I have work archives going back almost 20 years at this point. You know,
just 20 years? You haven't?
Yeah, you were in diapers when I started writing, I think.
20 years? Well, let's see, I'm 31.
Still
so
are.
I was going to say, depending on how much I've drank, it might not be too far from the truth. All right, so moving on.
Yes.
This one's all you, September Office updates.
And I'd love to talk about this in great detail, but I'm offline, so let me do this off the top of my head. One of the cooler things for me that happened this week was that every month Microsoft releases a set of updates for Office 365, and these are things that span their Office clients on Windows and the Mac, and Windows Mobile, Android and iOS, and the web. It's just everywhere. And every month it's like this, it's this incredible data dump of stuff. It's astonishing. You know, when Microsoft talks about rapid release and then actually does it, it's just amazing to kind of watch. This month, I think, is the biggest set of updates they've ever released, ever. It was big enough that I just kind of highlighted some of the things, and the things that I highlighted were the things that we got to have hands-on demo with on Sunday night, which were really cool. And so just to kind of touch on some of them, you know, Microsoft Analytics, which is for Office 365 commercial customers, is a web service that, you know, based on how you're using Microsoft's products and services, creates a graph of how you're spending your time. And it can see things like you spend X number of hours in meetings, but you spend X number of hours in meetings answering email or, you know, responding to other people, and you can see that you're distracted.
Crying.
And this is a way where we can find out, for example, that Brad is in fact a net negative on my life. That, you know, he's a distraction.
I consider that to be a positive.
Yeah. No, but I was telling the guys that made this, you know, this is a moment of introspection that some people are going to find to be uncomfortable, because seeing your life laid out like that is a little, it's creepy is not the right word, it's a little scary, you know. But it's an amazing thing, and it's something they're going to bring enterprise-wide so that from a higher level, the people overseeing the business can look at their business and say, you know, we're spending a lot of time in meetings. This is not a good way, you know, for us to do business. Or we're not, you know, where are we not spending enough time? We're not spending enough time talking to our customers or talking to our partners. And it's going to be one of those things that I think will drive improvements, but you can sort of understand where people would find it to be very creepy. There's a feature called Tap, which I think is a word in Outlook 2016 for Windows, I believe, which is basically the researcher feature if you ever use that in Word, except that it looks at documents and other content that's inside your organization. And so if you think about you're a student in school or you're a reporter and you're writing a story, you want sources that are external to you and you want to be able to cite them. When you're inside an organization, it's funny that basically what they were saying was you want to steal content from inside the company. That's the point. We're using our own stuff, and you don't really have the same citation type requirements. There's the Quick Starter feature for PowerPoint 2016 and Sway on the web, which is a way to go from that white page with black text and kind of create a really dynamic presentation from the get-go, which is a big problem. And so there's a bunch of other stuff, but it's that kind of thing. You know, Excel Maps, you know, Maps is a chart type, which is kind of awesome. You can make a game of Risk or whatever. And
I'd happily take over your continent spell.
Yep. Just a lot of stuff. And so to me, that was kind of a big deal. And actually, we should touch on the Outlook Mobile for Android and iOS thing as well.
Yeah, so Microsoft actually this week kind of pulled back the covers so take a step back. They have Outlook for Android and iOS. They've known this. This is actually an Accompli acquisition. Was that a year ago? It's been a little
more than a year. I think,
yeah, it's been a little bit of time. But one of the things that most people didn't know about this service is it actually ran on AWS, which is Amazon's cloud service. So Microsoft.
But what does that mean? So we kind of went through this yesterday. The way I think of a mobile email client, let's just say, is a client and you hit a cloud service, right? So how does AWS factor into that?
This is actually a really clever solution. I honestly think it's probably why Microsoft bought Accompli. What Accompli did was, so you have your email server and you have your end client. And typically the end client would just talk to the email server and get all the data. But you might have an Outlook.com, you might have a Gmail, and you might have an Exchange, which meant that the client actually had to have all that programmed in. So what they did was they built a service in between that would connect to those email inboxes, pull it into that service up in the cloud.
Does this set off any red flags for anybody?
But what that allowed them to do was that the email client was then no longer held hostage to what the API could support. They built their own APIs from the database in the cloud, and that's how they got focused inbox.
But what was the problem that enterprises had with that little feature?
So the problem with that is that intermediary section, as you can imagine, an enterprise company saying, hey, you're pulling our data into an unprotected cloud that we don't really know.
Right.
And so what Microsoft did was they swapped out AWS for their own Azure protected services. And because now it's running on Azure, Microsoft controls the entire transaction, they can now make certain guarantees about the privacy of that process.
Well, and you can also federate up to Azure in your organization, and that way
Exactly.
it's not technically leaving your organization.
Exactly. So that's why this is a big announcement. It's not so that for the end user like myself, I'm going to see any change, but for an enterprise company that is worried about the protection of their data, they can now use this app with the security built in that they know.
It's not just about moving to a Microsoft infrastructure, like when Hotmail moved from FreeBSD or whatever it was on to whatever Microsoft stuff is. And it's really about that, adding it into the chain of security.
Yeah, and what I think this actually really highlights about Microsoft is within the Office world, they're really making it hard to compete with Office, right? It's really easy to go out and build a word processor. It's really easy to go out and build a PowerPoint competitor, right? We've known that. There's Google Docs, Apple has iWork that they work on occasionally on every third Sunday of the month and release 24 months later.
It's a hobby.
It is, it really is a hobby. So you can build these little apps, but what you can't build is that ingrained security. You can't build in that ability to share content across. And it's not just sharing, it's sharing securely or sharing across your
sharing
internet.
that works out to all of your devices, where you understand that the security layer at every step along the way.
And that's why, so when people say, I think Office is going to be challenged by like Open Office or something, like they don't understand why the enterprise is using Office anymore. They're not using it for the Word functionality, they're using it for all the security that's baked in.
So Word is just a perk now.
It honestly really is. Like if you're looking to protect data files, especially with what they announced this week with the advanced threat protection in Office 365, that if you get mailed a malicious file, that service can now look and see, oh, I got it too, and actually drag that or claw back that information to protect my machine because you're an idiot.
So I followed most of that.
I really wanted to put emphasis on the end part.
All right,
But so that's really the value of Office these days, isn't the productivity suite, it's the protection. And you're seeing that everywhere at Microsoft. That was honestly the theme, and I'm going to try to work out a narrative post about what Microsoft is doing these days, but it's all security. That's everything they announced today, for the most part, was security. It was security with Windows 10 with IE Edge,
security,
and it was that. So it's really interesting to see how the Microsoft narrative is evolving in this software as a service space. And that is really hard to say consistently. Software as a service base.
Sally sells seashells down by the software as a service. Okay. Surface.
Expansion initiative?
Expansion? No. Surface Enterprise Initiative expanded this week. So a year ago this month, Microsoft opened up Surface sales and services, like support services, to Dell and then to other companies. The idea was that you could go to Dell, buy a Surface from them, and then add Dell support services on top of it, right? Which is the way companies buy things from Dell. So they wanted to add Surface to the mix. They've expanded that over the past year in many ways, but this week they opened it up basically to all partners worldwide. So any Microsoft partner that wants to resell Surface can obviously do so already, but now they can also resell Surface services, support services, all kinds of services on top of it. And so this is, I think we're at the full meal deal point with Surface when it comes to enterprise support. I think this is the final bullet point on that list of what they need to actually compete in the enterprise.
I also think it kind of further drives home the point that Microsoft isn't going to give up on this hardware. I think there's been some questions. I don't know if they're necessarily founded, but they're saying, hey, Microsoft kind of moved away from hardware in the phone space. We know that these things do well, right? They typically have at least $1 billion quarter per year selling hardware. Typically it's around the holiday time. So it's not like it's small. And by them going to the enterprise, especially Microsoft, going to the enterprise really, really means saying, hey, we're here for the life cycle of the device. We're not going to Google the situation and just give up halfway through, even though we've made promises.
I still think they only made these so Microsoft guys could have a laptop to use in videos. But yes, it is a big business, and it's obviously going better.
So that's been most of the content that has been announced up to today through Ignite. There's still a lot of sessions that are going on, but we kind of want to hit home on some stuff that's happening with Thurrott. We've been going through a lot of work to launch a lot of cool stuff, this podcast being one of them. You actually got a new shirt out of the deal.
I did, yes. I'm moving from t-shirts to shirts, and eventually it'll be tuxedos.
Bow tie?
Yeah,
little
T on it.
Little T bow tie? We'll call it a bow tee.
A bow tee. People in front of me were handed Thurrott hats that I'd never seen before in my life. And so it was like, hey, look, it's a Thurrott hat. And then it just went by me and went to somebody else.
So as you guys, as Paul kind of alluded to here, there actually is a studio audience live from Ignite. And Robert Haas, Jeff Rendell, and Jamie Ryan were the winners of the premium giveaway.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank
we
you very much.
sincerely appreciate it, and I apologize that you have to sit near Paul. But other things that have gone on this week, just kind of hitting back on some stuff. We launched forums.
Yep, and new comments.
Yeah, and forums, quite frankly, I know I'm extremely biased on this because I had a very strong hand in building them. Forums that don't suck. So I came from a world of IPB and vBulletin, and that's really just an old forum style. It had a place in the early 2000s, and it was fantastic, and sites that are still running them, they do just fine, but it was just kind of it's a very
Brad, somebody
heavy
asked
implementation.
if we could have a Linux forum. Are we going to have a Linux forum?
We can have whatever you want. I can't promise any.
Presidential debate forum.
There was a presidential debate going on. Realistically, we can do any type of forums. It's a WordPress implementation on what we think a modern forum should feel like. It's lightweight, it's simple to use, it's post-creation, commenting, and this is version 1. So we got it out the door, and we're already going to, there's actually a thread. If you have any ideas or features you guys want, our main developer is here.
If you folks can stick around who
Sure.
are here, if you can, just for a few minutes, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit, if that's okay.
So the forums are online, up and running. People are just having a good old time. Comments.
Yep.
Do you read the comments?
I do, and that's why I'm always so depressed.
At least it's not me.
Yeah, no, the new comments are beautiful looking, I think. I'm actually really happy with that.
Yeah, so to kind of, the big feedback we had, I learned something about the internet. There are Discuss fanboys.
Finally.
Like, people really like Discuss, and I totally get why people liked it, because it was very easy to log in. They had one login ID across many different sites, and I completely understand. The challenges we had was that we now have a membership on our site, and we actually, to be honest, we went to Discuss and said, hey, we have a membership, we want to launch a forum, and we also have comments. Can we use your login ID and path for all 3 of these products? And they came to us and said, no, you can't. Right. So to us, it wasn't that we didn't Discuss.
Yeah, obviously if we could use that, we
but
would.
we physically, they were not willing to work with us,
The
so
other
we had
thing
to go
they're not
our
willing
own
to do
route.
is prevent spam.
Yes. Well, those are, we delete all your comments anyway, so.
Yes, but I mean, it's kind of incredible to me that obvious spam gets through every single day.
Yeah.
And this is something we've complained about. You can mark it, you can work with them to try to stop it, and it just doesn't stop.
And so now spam gets through. It's at least on our agenda to take care of it, which we've already, knock on wood, implemented some spam controls, and we'll kind of scale them up and scale them down as needed. One thing I do want to bring up, and at some point we're going to need moderators too. I'd love to tell you that I can read everything in the forum and everything in the comments all day long, and same with you, but it's just realistically not a thing. So we will, once we get the tools built out, we can moderate stuff now, but it's a little wonky, but we're going to build out a suite of moderator tools. That's kind of probably version 1.5, around 1.0, we'll go 1 to 1.5. And there's a lot of other little things that people have brought up.
Sure.
And then this podcast.
Yeah, what a disaster.
You want to go?
So starting Monday, the podcast is going to go daily. Monday through Thursday, it will be not live. We'll record it whenever, based on our schedule.
When we have pants on.
It will, and it will be for premium users only.
Yeah, Monday through Thursday.
And then Friday, it's going to be live and open to everybody.
Yep.
We'll do Q&A, and we'll kind of take it from there. We have ideas around themes for each day and all that, and I don't think we should get into that today, but we obviously have some ideas there. The other thing is on Monday is the new site is launching.
Yes.
And just about a year ago, we were in Fort Collins, we had a meeting, and George, our boss and partner, was asking, what if you could do anything right now that would make your life better? And I said, I need some way to do little blurbs, and I was sort of thinking of a micro blog kind of thing, and that's what that Thurrott Daily thing that has been happening since is kind of a placeholder for.
Yep.
And this will be going live soon as well as part of the new site design.
Yeah, and so the new site design, it's coming together very well, and all things going well and the stars align, it should launch on Monday. And I want to put an emphasis, it's not like we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, right? Blogging and news sites have a kind of a standard mold, and we're not deviating too far from that, but we are putting a lot more emphasis on video, since we're going to be doing a video every single day.
Since we're so telegenic.
Since we're going to be doing a video every single day, we want to make sure that people can see that. And actually, I realistically think we might be doing more than one video potentially per day if we have expand into other podcasts. I have a podcast that's every Friday. You have Windows Weekly. So there's realistically, we have a lot of video, and we didn't have a good way to showcase it. So we're going to really put a big emphasis on that and make sure it's just more available to everybody else.
Yeah, it will expand. We have ideas around video reviews too, and this is stuff maybe for the future, but we're rolling. Now that this stuff is happening, we can kind of move on to new stuff.
Yeah, and I do kind of want to point out that if you see the design and you don't love it, we're going to create another forum thread for feedback.
Because this took a long time to build and we're tired of it.
But the good thing is like much like any product, anybody who's a developer knows that once you get it out of the gate, it's very easy to introduce little changes, small feedback, and that kind of thing. And so once we get the forums all online, the comments up and running, which they are now, and then the front page design, then we'll be in a position to say, okay, let's take a step back and let's get some feedback. Because realistically, Tina, myself, well, you don't really look at it. We've been looking at this every day, and we think it's great, but we know as soon as we let 1,000 people in, they're all going to have their own individual opinions, and we really do take them to
It's
heart.
just like Windows. You think you got it right, and then you unleash it on the world.
Yeah, deleting the start button, greatest move ever. My God.
Whoops. All right.
Got anything else, Mr. Paul?
That's most of it. I have vague plans to send Brad out to every premium member's house to cook him dinner one night, maybe like a Brad on Tour 2017 kind of thing, but
Paul's phone number is now available for $5 starting bid. His address is at $30. Any takers? But this is the second episode of the First Ring Daily. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next week.